I spent my whole life devoted to art history and to my family. But the day I spoke up about a painting, I was called a busybody and thrown out of my own daughter's house. That cut me deeper than any knife. What I didn't know then was that behind those words lay a plan of manipulation and greed so cold it would chill you to the bone. Stay with me, friends, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you won't miss more family stories like this. My name is Beatrice Hayes. I'm 70 years old, a retired art history teacher from Santa Fe, New Mexico. You know, I always believed silence had its own language. Sometimes it's the calm of a sunrise. Sometimes it's the heavy air before a storm. And in my daughter Olivia's art gallery that afternoon, silence was a verdict. Not a soul inside. Even the Santa Fe sunlight, usually so bright, looked pale and tired as it filtered through those glass doors, just like my Olivia. She was bent over, rearranging small sculptures, shoulders slumped, every movement drained of spirit. I could see the pain, an artist watching her life's work ignored. Julian, my son-in-law, was the opposite. He paced the oak floor, the sharp thud of his leather shoes echoing like a gavel. In his hand, a tablet. He called it unemotional truth. "Sweetheart," he began, voice soft as velvet, cold as steel inside. "These numbers don't lie. Sales are down 40% this quarter. We're sinking, Olivia." I stood in the corner, cloth in hand, pretending to dust a frame, but I heard every word. Olivia shrank under his numbers like a sparrow facing a hawk. My heart ached. I knew I should stay quiet. Julian hated me stepping in, but a mother's instinct and a lifetime of teaching art history wouldn't let me. "Van Gogh only sold one painting in his lifetime," I said gently. "Sometimes the world just needs time to catch up to beauty." Julian turned, smile polished like a banker's tie, but his eyes were sharp, annoyed. "Thank you, Mother. Very romantic view. But creditors aren't romantic." He turned back to Olivia, his voice slicing like a razor. "It's these kinds of illusions that got us here." His hand landed on her shoulder. She flinched. He was pulling her away from me, brick by brick, with numbers and fear. That wall finally collapsed that night, right onto my chest. Dinner was silent, only the clatter of silverware filling the room. Then Julian slid a bill across the table, medicine for my heart. "I don't want to upset you," he started, always the same fake kindness. "But between your prescriptions and living expenses, you see the problem. I'm carrying it all." As if I were nothing but a debt. My cheeks burned with shame. I opened my mouth to tell him I had a pension, that I could stand on my own. I wasn't anyone's burden. But before I could, "Mother!" he snapped. And Olivia, my Olivia, slammed her palm on the table. Tears welled in her eyes, not of love, but of anger bottled up too long. "Can you just stop talking, just once? Don't you see your words don't help? I'm exhausted. I can't take it anymore. You're so damn loud." Loud. That word stabbed straight through me. My whole life, I used words to teach, to comfort, to inspire. Now my own daughter used them to silence me. The room went still. Behind her, Julian's hand rested on her shoulder, comforting. But his eyes told the truth, triumph. He had won. Then he dropped the mask. "Since you've heard it all, let me be plain. With the gallery failing, with our finances strained, it's best you find another place to live. When we recover, we'll welcome you back." He was putting me out. I looked at Olivia, begging her eyes for one last sign, but she looked away. That was answer enough. I felt winter chill crawl through me, but I didn't cry. At my age, tears feel like a luxury. All I felt was a hollow cold. I packed a small suitcase, one cardboard box, a whole life reduced to that. The only thing I wrapped carefully was a faded landscape painting from my grandmother Eleanor, my last thread to the women before me. As I wheeled my suitcase to the door, Olivia stood behind her husband, head bowed, too afraid to meet my eyes. My heart broke. She was a victim too, caught in his game. "I hope you find the peace you're looking for, Olivia," I said, my voice rough as gravel. Then I passed Julian. At the doorway, just the two of us, I stopped. His expensive cologne hung in the air, smelled like lies. I leaned close, not whispering, but striking. "You'll never get it." For the first time, I saw his mask crack. He thought I was just an old woman spinning fairy tales. He was wrong. My mind was still sharp, and I knew exactly what he was after. Not my presence, not even my silence. He wanted what I carried with me. And he would not have it. The door slammed behind me, an ending to one life, the beginning of another. That night, I found a shabby motel, a single room, yellow walls stained with age, the sour smell of bleach. My world had shrunk to 4 walls. I sat on the sagging bed, looked out at the Santa Fe sun still shining beyond the glass, shining on a world I no longer belonged to. The pain was still there, burning whenever I thought of Olivia's scream or Julian's smug eyes. But strangely, the pain didn't destroy me. It stripped away the last illusions, leaving only clarity. Julian wasn't stupid, he was a fox. And a fox doesn't quit just because the rabbit slips away. He stalks, he waits. And I could already feel his eyes on me. A man sitting too long on a park bench with a newspaper. A car trailing too close behind my cab. Julian wasn't watching me out of care. He was waiting for me to break, waiting for me to sell the last thing of value I had. But he would wait a long, long time. And so, I decided to let him see exactly what he wanted to see. I began my own little play. I strolled into antique shops around town, places I knew word would travel back to Julian. I picked up old silver jewelry, asked the price, then sighed and set it down with a weary shake of my head. I leaned across pawnshop counters, asking how much an old pocket watch might fetch. I made sure to look worn out, desperate, an old woman down to her last keepsake, scraping by. And I knew, through those invisible eyes watching, Julian was smiling. He thought the rabbit had finally hopped into his trap. A few days later, she walked into my shabby little room. Olivia, my daughter. She looked around quickly, then turned away, as if she couldn't face the consequences of her own choices. She perched on the edge of the bed, hands twisting in her lap. "Mom," she whispered, I'm sorry about that day. I lost control. I sat in the chair across from her. I didn't interrupt. I just looked at her. And my silence carried more weight than scolding ever could. "I know I was wrong," she went on, her voice trembling. "But Julian, he's trying so hard, Mom. He's doing everything to save me, to save the gallery. He's come up with this amazing plan." She told me with a forced kind of excitement about a charity auction Julian had dreamed up. She was trying to convince me, yes, but mostly herself. "And so," she said, hesitating, her cold, clammy hand reaching for mine, "all I'm asking is for you to help us just this once. Donate Grandma's painting to the auction. It would be a symbol, proof that our family stands together. Please, Mom, for me." I searched her eyes, hoping to find some trace of the Olivia I once knew, bright, tender, full of promise. But all I saw was desperation, clumsily covered. "Olivia," I said softly, Do you really believe this is what will save you? She jerked her hand back. Of course, it's my only chance. I'm not talking about the gallery, I said, lowering my voice. I'm talking about you. Julian is a clever man. Every move he makes has a purpose. Did you ever stop and wonder why he suddenly cares about that old painting he once dismissed as worthless? Her face tightened. There you go again. You've never liked Julian. He's helping me, Mom, and all you do is doubt him. I don't doubt, I said calmly. I observe. I see how he looks at you when you fail. I see the satisfaction in his eyes when you depend on him. Love isn't control, Olivia. Love is lifting each other up. That's enough, Mom, she shouted, springing to her feet. I didn't come here for lectures about my husband. He loves me. I trust him. She was lying. I could see it plain as day. The seeds of doubt had sprouted, but fear was too strong. She needed to believe in Julian, because if not, her whole world would crumble. I sighed. All right. She blinked. You'll do it? I'll donate the painting, I said, because I don't want to see your gallery collapse. Then I looked her square in the eye. But remember this, Olivia. When a man promises to save you from a storm he created himself, be careful. He may not be your hero. He may be the storm. I stood, turned away. You can go now. I'll have the painting delivered tomorrow. She lingered, torn. My words had lodged inside her, but she wasn't ready to face them. Thank you, Mom, she murmured, then hurried out, running not from me, but from the truth she couldn't yet face. The door clicked shut. My calm mask dropped. I snatched up the phone. Arthur, it's Beatrice, I said quickly. Do you have a moment? There's something you need to see right away. The game's in play. That night, in Arthur's restoration studio, warm lamplight glowing, the faint scent of turpentine in the air, the truth began to stir. Arthur, an old friend, a master with paintings, had hands as steady as a surgeon and eyes that missed nothing. He shone ultraviolet light across Grandma Eleanor's canvas. This paint layer, he muttered, squinting, cheap, slapped on later, sloppy work, almost like someone wanted to cover something up. My heart pounded. He dipped a cotton swab in solvent, brushed it gently over a hidden corner. Slowly, the dull brown lifted, washed away like mud in the rain. Beneath it bloomed a blue so pure, so luminous it took my breath away. And there, nestled in the brushstrokes, were two delicate letters entwined, G-O-K. I held my breath. Arthur removed the painting from its rotting frame. On the back, in faded pencil, a message still clung to the wood like a whisper from the past. For my dearest friend, Eleanor, G-O-K. Grandma Eleanor, I whispered. The stories she told me weren't fairy tales. They were true. She and Georgia O'Keeffe had been friends. I turned to Arthur, my weakness gone, replaced by steel. Photograph everything, document it, send copies to the museum. We need an official evaluation, right away. Meanwhile, across town, Olivia was stumbling onto the truth in a far harsher way. That night, she couldn't sleep. She padded to the kitchen for water, only to hear her husband's voice low on the balcony phone. The night was still, every word cut sharp as glass. Yes, Costello, everything's lined up. Starting bid, 500, you close at 1,000. No higher, just a silly charity piece. The real deal's at the Four Seasons, 11 p.m. 15 million. Cayman account as agreed. Make sure the merchandise arrives intact. The merchandise, 15 million. Cayman. My daughter's world shattered in a breath. The devoted husband act, the charity auction, nothing but a slick, staged scam. And her life, like mine, like my grandmother's painting, was just another pawn on his chessboard. Just before dawn, there was a knock at the door of my motel. I opened it. Olivia stood there, face white as paper, eyes empty. She didn't say a word. She just fell into my arms and sobbed, deep, shaking sobs of regret and fear and a heart breaking in two. I only patted her back. I had been waiting for this moment. When she finally calmed, I didn't offer comfort. I laid a folder on the table, stamped in red. "This is the evaluation from the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum," I said, steady as stone. "And this is our plan. He built the stage, sweetheart. Now we're going to write the ending." That night, the Hawthorne Gallery glittered like never before. Julian spared no expense for his final act. Warm gold lights, crystal flutes of champagne, a lazy ribbon of jazz floating through the room. Elegance to hide the rot beneath. He was the star of the evening, drifting among wealthy guests, shaking hands, smiling the smile of a hunter about to take his biggest prize. He had no idea the prey had slipped the trap. The prey was watching, and she wasn't alone. My daughter, Olivia, stood beside him, picture-perfect devotion, a sleek black dress, careful makeup hiding swollen eyes, a practiced smile just wide enough to pass. She was playing the role of a lifetime. I watched from the front row, seated quietly next to my old friend Arthur. In my evening clutch, there wasn't money or lipstick. There was the evaluation file, heavy with the weight of truth. Time moved on. Lot after lot sold. Julian grew more impatient. Finally, the host announced the last item. And now, his voice rang out, a surprise, donated at the 11th hour by an anonymous benefactor, an unsigned landscape, but a gift from the heart. They brought out my Grandma Eleanor's painting. It looked small, humble, under that grand light. I saw Julian flick his eyes toward his nan, a fellow with the face of a sewer rat. Opening bid, $500. Costello shot up his paddle. 1,000, he barked, tossing the number out like he was buying a trinket. The host lifted his gavel. 1,000, going once. $50,000! A woman's voice, crisp and commanding, cut through from the back. The room fell silent and turned. A woman in an expensive suit rose. "Dr. Alana Velez, representing the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum. We're very interested in this work." Julian's smile froze. I watched his face slide from smug to rattled to stunned. His cheap buy plan died on the spot. He flashed a desperate signal at Costello. Costello blanched and ground out, $60,000! Dr. Velez, the ally Arthur and I had quietly brought into place, didn't blink. She spoke like she was ordering coffee. $250,000. Panic washed over Julian, sweat beaded. He turned to whisper to Olivia, but she didn't look at him. She looked at me. I gave the smallest nod, our signal. With Julian cornered, I rose. I didn't climb the stage. I simply stood where I was and let my voice carry. "Dr. Velez, thank you for the museum's interest. However, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. This painting is not for sale." Julian whipped around, his face a strange mix of rage and terror. He hissed, shrill enough to make the front row jump. "What did you say? Are you out of your mind? You signed the donation papers. Legally, this painting belongs to this auction." He was right about one thing. I had signed, and that was the very trap he never saw coming. I looked straight into his eyes, now wide with fear. "I agreed to donate an artwork," I said, not shouting, just clear, ringing enough to reach every ear. But I did not agree to take part in a crime. A plan to seize a priceless masterpiece, flip it on the black mart, and siphon off millions to cover your goddamn debts. A ripple of shock spread through the room. Julian shouted, trying to drown me out. "Lies! You're making this up. You have no proof." "Oh, but I do." I lifted the file, the museum seal bright on the first page. Proof that this is a genuine Georgia O'Keeffe. And I have here, I drew out another sheet. Copies of your offshore betting accounts, Julian. 7 figures in the red. He went still, eyes glassy. In that same breath, Olivia walked onto the stage. She was no longer a frightened sparrow. She stood tall, eyes blazing, and took the microphone from the stunned host. As owner of the Hawthorne Gallery, she began, voice trembling but hard as crystal, I declare this auction closed. Julian roared like a wounded animal. You have no right. I'm the organizer. I'm the one saving you. No, Olivia said, sharp as a blade. You're not saving me. You're using my trust, and you used my gallery to stage a con. She turned to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, this event must be canceled because it was built on deceit. Its purpose wasn't charity, but to legitimize a dirt-cheap transfer of this painting before reselling it overseas, illegally. The whole thing is a tool in a criminal scheme. Shut up! Julian lunged toward the stage. You don't know what you're saying. Before he could reach her, the gallery doors opened. 2 uniformed officers stepped in, with Arthur just behind them. He'd gone to call the police. Their eyes swept the room and settled on Julian, who stopped dead, face white as chalk. Olivia met her husband's collapse with a voice both bitter and free. I know exactly what I'm saying, Julian, for the first time in years. And I know exactly who you are. She set the mic down and turned toward me as the officers approached Julian. His show had finally, truly ended. Olivia didn't look back at him. She faced me, eyes wet, not with despair, but release. Into the mic, she said, and thank you to my mother, the woman who taught me the most important lesson in art, to know the true value of a thing. The curtain fell. Late that night, after the officers had taken Julian away and the last guests had gone, only Olivia and I remained in the empty gallery. We stood before the painting. It no longer looked small. It seemed to cast its own quiet light. I let fear blind me, Olivia whispered. I forgot the first lesson you taught me. Always look beneath the top layer of paint. I rested my hand on her shoulder, the old weight in my chest gone. And now you see, I said softly, let's show the world. A few months later, the Hawthorne Gallery reopened. No more fake splendor, just light and life. On the main wall, in the place of honor, a small bronze plaque hung beside a museum-grade reproduction. Sunrise over Peternal by Georgia O'Keeffe, exhibited in partnership with the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum and the Eleanor Heritage Trust. Olivia and I were hanging a new piece across from it by a young, unknown woman artist. We smiled at each other. Not a victor smile, but the smile of freedom, of a beginning. We hadn't just saved a gallery. We'd saved ourselves. And we'd repainted our future, this time with the truest colors.